Hello, everyone, and inside today's Locked On Canadiens, how does this trade impact the Habs? And Pierre-Luc Dubois traded to NOT Montreal once again.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1094 of Locked On Canadiens, your daily Montreal Canadiens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day of the week, wherever you get your daily podcast, Google, Apple, Spotify, or here on youtube.com as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Some terms apply. Let's just jump right into things. I am one of your hosts. I am Scott Matla. I am, again, I'm not flying solo today, but I've been flying solo this week while my co-host has been enjoying her well-deserved vacation. But I am not alone today because I've got all the listeners and the viewers and the haters and everyone else out there. But I'm joined by a good friend of the show, Ian Boisvert from the Build podcast. And Ian, I think I picked a great day to reach out and be like, hey, there's not much going on at like 9 o'clock this morning before all hell broke loose for the next like 6 hours around the NHL. How are you doing today?
Doing good. We're both in the same sort of heat wave. And, I run hot, so it kind of sucks. But other than that, like you messaged me, you're like, hey, let's do a show. I said, great. We'll talk about Mark Streit for a half hour. It'll be awesome. And then I'm at the laundromat and Markstrom gets traded. And then Pierre-Luc, you were insider Scott to me. You messaged me PLD to Washington. I was like, what? That doesn't even make any sense. So it's one of those days in the summer that just everything evaporates out. Everything just appears out of nowhere. And it's a symptom of like the NHL schedule just going too long, right? Like this would be peak, GM's fiddling time. And instead, like, teams sort of feel like, well, should we be making moves during the Stanley Cup final? It's kind of weird too. But yeah, it was a fun day.
I am answering my other phone is an Xbox controller in case anybody is not watching this, which you should. I was at a Barnes and Noble with my fiance when the PLD trade came across my Twitter feed, and I took my foot off the brake without putting the car in park first when I saw that. And nearly crashed into somebody in front of me. We will get to PLD, I promise. Awesome. But we have to start actually with the Jacob Markstrom trade because this legitimately, not like Leaf fans, how does this affect X team? This actually does have a direct impact on the Montreal Canadiens on not one trade condition, but two of them. And I guess we should start with the trade is Jacob Markstrom with 33 or 30% salary retained by Calgary to the New Jersey Devils for a 2025 first-round pick, top 10 protected, and defenseman Kevin Ball, which does not seem like a lot, but that is for Locked On Flames to discuss on their own show. They can handle that. And my biggest thought with that is you might go, wow, the Devils finally got a goaltender. It's true, they did. Just after they traded for Jake Allen at the trade deadline last year, which if you will remember correctly, is a third-round pick right now, but it upgrades to a second-round pick if he plays 40 games and the Devils make the playoffs. Adding Jacob Markstrom makes, and Ian, this was your direct quote from Twitter, makes the making the playoffs part of this a lot more likely. The 40 games part, a lot less likely. And I'm not sure if it's 40 games in a season or 40 total games on that contract because he played like a dozen for the Devils last year. So
I've got the condition in front of me. It upgrades to its 2025 second round pick if Allen plays in 40 or more games in the 2024-25 season. So it's only next year. The games last year don't count. And if and this is a direct read, if the club that Allen is a member of qualifies for the playoffs in 24-25. So if they trade Allen, if the Devils trade Jake Allen to another team that makes the playoffs and he becomes a starter on that team and plays, over 40 games, that Montreal would satisfy that second condition. I find the odds of that to be kind of low. I feel like they love the idea of a Markstrom-Allen tandem for the next, little while. So it's I said on Twitter earlier, the playoff part of this gets satisfied, more. It's more likely that ends up being the case. But I feel like the only way Allen plays in 40 or more games next season now is if Markstrom sustains a serious injury or he gets traded to another team. So it's sort of a wash in the sense that it's the condition hitting is just as likely now as it was yesterday, but it's just the likelihood of both of those things shifted.
Yes, and I'm looking at the Devils cap friendly page before the Capitals buy this too. Markstrom is here for 2 more years. Jake Allen is on the last year of his deal. Kaapo Kakkonen is a UFA as of right now. And then in the minors, and this is where I'm kind of wondering what their plan is. Nico Dawes and Akira Schmid are both RFA goaltenders who played games with the big club and the AHL team last year, along with Isaac Poulter, who was one of their main goalies down in the AHL as well, and 2 guys just starting on entry-level deals, not counting Keith Kincaid, who is UFA right now. That would mean they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 potential goalies under contract going into next season. All of this reads that either they're going to want to trade Jake Allen now, which who
Maybe.
knows, and promote one of the AHL guys. But like you said, I think they like the idea of veteran 1B, backup Jake Allen at this point, and Jacob Markstrom, which we're going to find out how good this Devils defense really can be with a new coach, because they have a new coach now too. And I believe Travis Green is the one coaching this team, which
no, it's Sheldon Keefe.
Oh, it is Sheldon Keefe. Who is Travis Green coaching then?
Where did he go? Travis Green went to Ottawa. He's in Ottawa now. It's even funnier.
It's even funnier though. I'm like, there's a team wearing black and red that hired him. Yeah. The making the playoffs thing with a healthy Jack Hughes and a goaltending tandem like that should be enough. Satisfied that. We're going to see how well they can balance that, because I don't think Jake Allen's going to get half the starts. No. Like you said, unless something catastrophic happens, which has happened with Jacob Markstrom in the past. As I mentioned, though, there was another first-round pick involved in this, and going back to the Calgary Flames. And we're going to dive into the most complicated effing trade thing I've ever seen. I got corrected immediately on this on Twitter, is that the Sean Monahan trade, the Canadiens had a potential of like 9 different outcomes with this, it feels like. None of them were 2024. This year, with another first-round pick going back to Calgary, they now have 3 in the first round of 2025, potentially. They have Florida's, they have their own, and then they have this new one from the Devils for this season. The Devils one is top 10 protected, and I believe the Devils own, or the Flames own one in this trade. In the Sean Monahan trade, if they finish in the top 10, the Canadiens will get Florida's first round pick instead.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the Canadiens can pick between the higher, lower of the Devils or Panthers pick, because no matter what, the Flames owe the Canadiens a first round pick. But I thought, this is fine, because if they finish, no matter where they finish this year, they're going to get the Flames first round pick. And I think the Flames are going to be horror awful this year. And I'm almost hoping maybe you defer to 2026 when they're still rebuilding and bad and there's no protection on that. So it's a lot.
I'm not going to pretend I understand the conditions of this trade. When you're on cap friendly, at least for the time being, when you hover over that pick, the tooltip that pops up, like the little pop-up box, it covers the screen. Like it's the amount of conditions on this. Like, you would need like a 10-minute video to describe it exactly how it's going to play out. I will care about this pick once I know when it is. I don't know what pick it is. I don't know when it's happening. I'm not losing sleep over this. Here's the thing. If I understand the conditions enough, the only way Montreal gets a really good pick is if next season both Florida and Calgary are terrible. Like, otherwise, it's a very late first-round pick.
So I'm going to read this.
I don't know that that's likely. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to read this all the way through as best I can. And this is ignoring the 2024 part, because the Canadiens, I don't think, are taking that. At this point, it says if Calgary's first round pick is between 20 and 32, Montreal can take that pick instead. It is not. Calgary is picking in the upper in the lottery this year. So in the event Calgary receives Florida's 2025 first round pick, which I believe they have, which was from the Matthew Tkachuk trade, if both Calgary and Florida's pick are not top 10, Montreal will receive the better of Calgary and Florida's 2025 first round pick. Result TBD. If Calgary's pick is top 10 and Florida's pick is not top 10, Montreal will receive Florida's pick. Cool. In the event Calgary does not receive Florida's first round pick, the sub scenario is that if Calgary's pick is not top 10, Montreal will receive the Calgary pick. If Florida's pick is not top 10, is a better pick than Calgary's and was transferred to another team due to prior conditions, Montreal will also receive Calgary's 2025 fourth round pick. Sub scenario number 2, if Calgary's pick is in the top 10, if Calgary's pick is first overall, Montreal will receive Calgary's 2025 third and the better of Calgary or Florida's 2026 first round pick. If Calgary's pick this year in 2025 is between 2nd and 10th, Montreal, no matter what, will receive Calgary's 2025 first round pick. So the hope of still getting a top 10 pick is alive. I'm not going to bother trying to find the details on the Matthew Tkachuk trade because it's a lot and we're short on time in this segment. All I know is the Canadiens are definitely getting another first round pick. It's complicated, and I'm going to miss cap friendly because the Capitals are cowards and robber barons. And we're also going to make fun of them coming up next because Pierre-Luc Dubois is on the move, not to Montreal. And we're getting to that coming up next. But first, as I said off the top of the show, today's show is brought to you by Game Time. It is the middle of baseball season, and you want to go to the ballpark. You want to get your hot dog. You want to get your cold drink. You want to watch a dude sock some dingers over the outfield fence. And guess what? Game Time makes that easier because as you get closer to first pitch on Game Time, the tickets decrease in price, allowing you to get in even at the last minute. And they have so many things beyond that, flash deals, zone deals, and all-in pricing. You will see the total up front when you see your seat, where you can also check the view from your seat all before you buy. No hidden fees, nothing at all. So right now, take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens, and I am out of breath between trying to fit the entire Monahan trade conditions into one segment and then also 2 ad reads after that. I do want to put a challenge out to our listeners. I want people to read the Monahan trade impressions or the Monahan trade conditions doing impressions of people.
Yeah.
Like if you can read it entirely as Bob Cole, I will donate $50 to the charity of your choice. Just send it to us at LO_Canadiens, LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com. This is open to like any person. And then maybe we will play some of the best impressions on like a Friday episode this summer because it's ridiculous. And speaking of ridiculous, Pierre-Luc Dubois was traded, and I thought this was a joke. I thought with all the media accounts being hacked nowadays because Twitter is a cesspool, that the Pierre-Luc Dubois to Washington trade was just made-up fantasy. And then it was actually Elliot Friedman who actually said, nope, he's going to Washington. And then the follow-up was the trade is 1-for-1 for Darcy Kemper in a trade that I do not understand in either direction whatsoever, but it's done. And he's been in the league 8 years now, and Pierre-Luc Dubois is on his 4th team. He didn't even get a chance to do the normal, like, quiet quitting part of his play here, but he's a Washington Capital now. And I don't know why that's weird to me. Nothing about this makes any sense in my brain. Ian, I'm going to ask for your kind of input while I pull up Capitals Friendly here to take a look at what it means for their cap situation.
I think it's an opportunity for 2 teams to trade, guys they invested a ton in who have disappointed and who haven't filled the role that they were expected to fill, right? Like Darcy Kemper came into Washington. He's going to be our number 1 goalie until somebody this show is, pretty familiar with, and Charlie Lindgren steps in and steals the role and really propels them to a playoff spot. Darcy Kemper became expendable, and not only expendable, a piece that you kind of have to move. You need teams that are looking to get into the playoffs. They need a one in net. They need a guy who they're going to be able to look at and go, we're going to get 55, 60 starts out of this guy. I might maybe, and I think it's because for a long time, I was a big Pierre-Luc Dubois truther and that he's actually a good player. I like the bet that Washington is making here. Don't get me wrong. I don't love the contract. The contract stinks. The contract smells. It's bad. It's too much money for too long. Like, it's not great. And you look at, you're going to talk to us about the cap friendly page in a second. Like, they have a lot of money tied up in some old dudes and some not so good dudes who, like, it's just going to be tough for them to compete. But I do like what Pierre-Luc Dubois brings down the middle to that Capitals team, because their identity has always been Alex Ovechkin, and it's going to remain that. But it does add a name. It adds a guy down the middle that people in this league are familiar with. Dubois has to like the opportunity in Washington a whole lot more than what developed in Los Angeles, where it was like Pierre-Luc Dubois is not a fourth line center. On the Kings, he was, because he was behind Philip Deneau, Andrei Kopitar, and Quentin Byfield. Like, he's the fourth best center of that group. And that's a little unfair to Pierre-Luc Dubois, but that's the way he signed up for that. Like, right? He wanted to be there. Again, like, it's just one of those weird one-for-one trades are hilarious. Today was a ghost of June 29th, 2016. The only thing we need now is Stamkos signing an extension, which could happen because,
I haven't looked at Twitter since we've started recording here. So, like, I'm looking at both the Kings and Capitals cap friendly pages, and I'm not sure which one I'm more concerned by right now. And I guess we'll start with Washington here. Like, you have Ovechkin for the next 2 years at $9.5 million. Dubois is signed until 2031. Also, he's 25 though. So that's 7 years in the future now. If I have my things right here, he'll be 32, just exiting his prime.
He's going to be 26 in a few days. Like,
that's right, because he had the trade protection on July 1st.
The trade protection on July 1st, and the buyout would have changed because he would have turned 26, and instead of it going from what is it, half, it goes to 2/3 or something like that. So, like, I feel like this trade probably developed as the series went on, when the Kings realized we're probably not going to be able to buy him out. Like, we might not have time.
So again, he'll be 33. Not horrible at the end of that contract.
No,
a little bit expensive. The bigger one that I'm concerned about is Tom Wilson. His contract ends at the same time, and he is 30 right now, making $6.5 million. Dylan Strome is signed for the next 4 years at $5 million. He was their first line center, I believe, last year. And then whatever the hell an Alexi Protas is signed for the next 5 years at $3.375 million. And then there's just nothing really beyond that. TJ Oshie is signed for this year. He's 37, which is mind blowing because he's been around. It feels like he's only 30, but he's had, injury issues. And then I go over to LA. LA now has $23.5 million in cap space, but they have 10 roster spots to fill, including Quentin Byfield is up for a contract, Arthur Kaliev, Blake Lizotte, who is still an RFA, guys on defense. They have now David Rittich and Darcy Kemper in goal there. But this is a team that needs as much cap space as they could, because I think Quentin Byfield's about to get paid in this. Yeah. And then I go down to the AHL too, and Alex Turcotte's an RFA. You have Tyler Madden, Samuel Fajimo are all RFAs, guys who are going to need a raise here, and they need as much cap space. And you take 3 years of Darcy Kemper at 5.2, then 7 more years of PLD at $3 million more. But it's like, boy, those are two teams that are really treading that line of it's going to either fall apart and you're going to rebuild whether you like it or not, or because the top half of the Kings is not young. Kevin Fiala signed for the next 5 years at 7.8. He's 27. Kopitar's 36. Deneau's 31. Kempe's 27. Trevor Moore's 29. And then it gets a little bit younger. But the young guys that are here, you got to pay now. Drew Doughty's getting $11 million for the next 3 years. Mikey Anderson's getting 4.1 for the next 7 years, which, okay. But this all reeks of, hey, we have a problem and you have a problem. And I guess they kind of fix each other's problems a little bit. But today is June 19th. It is 7:52 p.m. In 2024. Do we revisit this in a year to see if the PLD to Montreal rumors have started again?
Yeah. I do have one lasting question from this, and is Rob Blake good at this? It doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel good.
My other question, because he made his own bed and he kind of got out of it, but it's kind of like you just threw the blanket back over there and said you made your bed. The Canadiens have dodged a bullet. Yes. Like, I like PLD. I wanted this trade last year, but I'm also wondering, what do you do if he's here and has that season and then a year in Kent Hughes is looking to trade him? It feels like, did we dodge a bullet with Pierre-Luc Dubois last year?
I think so, especially considering, what they gave Winnipeg to get him. To be clear, when I was very on the PLD train last summer, it would not have been at the contract that he signed, and it would not have been at the deal that Winnipeg made, because Winnipeg, I mean, it seemed like they were, in a bad spot, and that's how Montreal was going to be able to take advantage of it. But instead, Kevin Cheveldayoff just took Rob Blake upside down and shook him until the money stopped falling out. Like,
Wild.
It's I do think it's funny that it is one of the more realistic outcomes that within a year or two we're talking about him doing the quiet quitting again and being like, man, I don't really want to play. We can have those, remember the Columbus montage of him and his last 2 shifts with Torts, where he's just, I can't even say he's just out there doing cardio, because he's barely doing that. It was rough. It was rough. So I completely agree with you. I think that we have not heard the end of Pierre-Luc Dubois in Montreal rumors, even before this contract ends.
And we will cross that bridge when we come to it. But we do have to talk about the current Canadiens offseason and what exactly is Kent Hughes up to. We're going to get that coming up next. Today's show is also brought to you by Hockey Ultimate GM, and in Habs, Locked On Habs fans, I want you to take a moment to bring up the best new mobile game out there, Ultimate Hockey GM. If you've ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM and managing a hockey franchise, and do you think you could run the Habs better than Kent Hughes did? Well, your dream can come true, and then this game will most definitely be for you. You can manage every strategic asset or aspect of your team, play through seasons, lead it to glory, hire the right coaches and staff, trade players, draft picks, navigate free agency and the NHL draft, all in a challenging and realistic game world. And as a Habs fan, you know there is no offseason. Even when it is quiet, GMs are constantly making moves at every point of the year to improve their team's chances, and that's why I think you're going to love this game. It's completely free and available to play offline, so play on the go as you want and when you want to. And by the way, Locked On Network listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in the game store, so make sure to check it out. Download the game, visit hockeygm.app, or look it up in any of the app stores. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. We are back for one last hurrah with Ian Boisvert of the Build podcast. And we've talked about trades from previous Kent Hughes' offseason, trades that he didn't make last year. So I guess the question now is that I'm waiting for something to happen because things are happening, and Kent Hughes is kind of that guy like lurking in the weeds, and all of a sudden he is the center of attention for everything. I don't know what Kent Hughes is up to, which is par for the course.
Yeah.
And I know the draft is upcoming, and I'm sure that his entire directive is focused on the draft with everything going on, especially with Demidov coming in and working out, and then probably the Canadiens were not part of that group that were there watching him and Levshinov and other players, but I have no doubt they were interested in that. But setting aside the draft, and Ian, I know that you were no more an insider than I am on things, but what the hell is Kent Hughes up to? Like, what is the big plan here? Because we've heard Laine's name, we've heard Ehlers, we've heard Natchez, we've heard everything under the sun. And yet I feel like we don't know absolutely anything at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point to make. And I think the Canadiens media landscape would be a lot better if people just admitted we didn't know what was happening. Like I can't do any more, like, just go on Google and type in Canadiens big splash and just have yourself a good time just running through contradictory articles. The Canadiens are going to do this. No, they're going to do this. It's going to be a big move, but no one will see it coming. Like it's hilarious how, like, this part of the season sucks. It just sucks. I don't like to be a negative dude, but this part of the season is brutal because it's just dudes out here making stuff up. And here we are, two dudes about to make a bunch of stuff up. I really like the go ahead.
I was say I love that I Googled this, and the first thing I get is need to make a big splash, not guaranteed to make a big splash. Will they make a big splash? Need to make a big splash, need to make a big splash. And then our video about them signing a top goalie from Europe on this podcast. Like Canadians have made calls on big names. The Score with a questionable headline: Hyman superpower. Canadians primed for splash. Habs make splash 4 months ago. Like nobody knows a damn thing.
Yeah, it's the best and also the worst. The one guy that I'm kind of keyed in on as a reclamation project is Patrick Laine. I think that there's a legitimate fit there. The Canadiens need goals. Is he the most engaged player defensively? No, probably not. Again, nothing is going to happen on that front until he leaves the player assistance program. He's still in there. And wish him all the best in dealing with that. That's way more important than, any kind of hockey thing that he could be doing. So I'm really interested in him. Yes, the dollar amount is heavy, but the thoughts out there are that Columbus would be willing to eat some of that money. And it's only for 2 years. If it doesn't work out, you walk away at the end of it. It's not a big deal. But the reward here is Montreal gets a guy who's in his mid-20s, right? He was in the PLD draft. We're talking about the same generation of player. 2016, it went Matthews, Laine, Puljujarvi, and Dubois. I was there. It was in Buffalo.
Was it? I mean, I was there too, but I swear I thought the Puljujarvi draft. I thought Dubois went before Puljujarvi did.
Everyone thought that was going to happen, and I remember the pop in the arena when they took Dubois instead of Puljujarvi because it was Kekalainen, and everyone was like,
So because I remember, and this went into something Hattie Kalakash said on Twitter as well, is the trade originally was to send PK Subban to Edmonton for, I believe it was Taylor Hall at the time, and the one of the picks in the draft,
pick swap, right?
The fourth overall pick there, so the Canadiens could pick Pierre-Luc Dubois, and then Dubois went third, and the Canadiens backed out of it. That's a summer topic to cover the rest of that, but I'm kind of with you. If Columbus retains any amount of that and brings that cap down, I'm for it. Columbus also has $1 bajillion in cap space, but they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 R6 if you count Jake Bean on their main roster, plus Kent Johnson are all due for contracts, and they have a bunch of other guys coming up, so they might want to maximize that. It's the one thing that I can't help think might happen, but also it might not, because again, none of us know anything. Like,
right.
It's going to be it feels like we're going to get something out of left field. And like the Canadiens acquire Nazem Kadri for some reason, which I think would actually rule on a lot of levels. But
I love that.
It's too quiet. Like Kent Hughes, and I'm going to make a video on like his offseason checklist so far. He's gotten the ELC pieces signed for next season. He's, Oliver Kapanen's taken care of. Even if he doesn't make the team, he's coming back. They've added some pieces to the AHL slowly but surely. They added a minor league goalie that they trust with an NHL deal. And the draft is in 8 days from the time that people are hearing this. We are getting to the end of the off-season runway and starting the busy part of the off season where everything is happening at once here. if they don't get Line A, who's your I don't want to say out of pocket, but like out of left field potential thing that the Canadiens might do?
Yeah, you mentioned him a minute ago. I love the idea of them swooping in and grabbing a potentially distressed asset like Kent Johnson. That's a guy who, you think about Kirby Dach and the year that Montreal grabbed him. He was a 3rd overall pick, and then a few years went by, and Chicago decided they were moving on because a new general manager was in, and he was going tear down. We're tearing this up. Everything must go. I don't know that we have any kind of inclination that that's what Don Waddell is going to do now that he's, in charge in Columbus. But Ken Johnson was scratched a lot last year. He started in the AHL, which was silly because, look at the Columbus roster at the beginning of last season. He should have absolutely been playing games. And that's just a guy who could add some top 6 flair to a Canadiens team that, I don't know if you know this, but the Canadiens need elite talent. Like, we only talk about it every day. When we talk about, potentially Hughes taking a big swing, that's the kind of player I'm interested in. A younger player who fits with the core of what we have currently. And you might be able to get him not at a discount. That's going to cost a significant piece to grab him. But, if they do their scouting right, that could be a trade that's worth making.
I do wonder, it all depends on what coach comes in as well. Obviously, Pascal Vincent was fired, and everyone talked about how he wasn't put in a good spot or whatever, but also I just don't think he was a very good coach for that team based on the way he handled prospects in this. Obviously, listen to Locked On Blue Jackets. I'm going to tell Jay that Ian is trading for Kent Johnson, and he's going to get mad at both of us. But that's going to bring a wrap to our show. You will see a lot more of Ian this summer, especially as we get through the draft. We're going to do a live stream the Saturday after the draft is over, just because who doesn't want to hang out and definitely make bold predictions about everything? You can follow Ian on Twitter at maybe it's Ian. You can subscribe to his show, The Build Podcast, as well. You can follow us on Twitter at LO_Canadiens, LockedOnCanadiens at gmail.com. You can follow me at Scott Malice. Subscribe wherever you get your daily podcasts, Google, Apple, Spotify, or here on YouTube.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks, and we will see you all next time.